Welcome to Citrin Cooperman's Corner Chats. I'm Peter Katz of Westfair Communications, publisher of the business journal, westfaironline.com, News at Noon, and other digital newsletters to keep you fully informed. Citrin Cooperman has released its latest manufacturing and distribution pulse survey that provides fresh insights into the recovery from COVID, the multiple impacts of higher interest rates, the current labor market, and much more. And we'll take a look at the survey with Anthony Harrypersad, partner with Citrin Cooperman Advisors LLC, and partner with Citrin Cooperman and Company LLP. Anthony provides audit and business consulting services to his clients that include family-owned middle market businesses as well as large businesses with global operations. Among the fields Anthony serves are real estate, technology, private equity investment funds, and manufacturing and distribution. Welcome, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Great. Anthony, let's begin by jumping right in. Tell me a little bit about the Manufacturing and Distribution Pulse Survey. Now, this is not the first such survey that Citrin has taken.
That's right. Yeah, this is our third survey that we've done. So the 2023 Pulse Survey surveyed approximately 200 respondents in the manufacturing and distribution industry. And it's primarily for their year-end 2022. And the results are actually, somewhat surprising. Given all of the disruptions and the difficulties businesses faced over the last 3 years, really, 2022 was actually, from our respondents, a very, very good, strong year. And approximately 90% of our respondents responded that they had increased revenue, which isn't all that surprising. Given the inflationary environment that we're in, you'd expect revenues to be up because sales prices are probably going up. But more impressive than that, more than 90% of the respondents also said that there was growth in EBITDA. Which is amazing considering the massive cost increases that were happening because of supply chain issues throughout the year. It's pretty impressive. It shows that there's absolutely demand for manufacturing and distribution products. And it also shows that companies in this space can be quite agile to respond to changes in the economic environment.
We'll get into some of the nuts and bolts that were uncovered in the survey in a little bit. But when you have this survey in your hands and you go to see clients, how do you put this to use? What value is it?
I think it adds a tremendous amount of value to clients and to prospective clients because what it does is it showcases what companies in the industry are doing. And this survey doesn't just apply to large companies. I think the range for companies that were surveyed is anywhere from $10 million in revenue a year to $1 billion or over $1 billion in revenue. So we can sit down and show our clients, look, this is what companies in the industry are doing to fight all of the different forces that are coming at companies, whether it's adopting new technology, changing the way that they do business, changing their business model, renegotiating contracts with suppliers and customers. There's a lot of strategy that companies are using that could be used by other companies in the same space.
Now, if I happen not to be a Citrin Cooperman client, could I have access to this report? Is there some place where I could see it?
Absolutely. The report is public. We publish it on our LinkedIn page. It's on our website. Anyone can access it. It's really a wealth of information. And one of my favorite things to do is looking at that survey and looking at my client base and see, how does my client base fit into this? Because I might have some clients that are, all of their responses would be the same way the survey respondents responded. But I also have some clients that are possibly lagging behind on some of the questions that were asked in the survey. So this is where we can strategically find ways to assist those clients.
And can you give us an idea of what some of those ways might be that you can assist clients based upon what you've been able to uncover in the spring manufacturing and distribution pulse survey.
Yeah, I think a good example is in the survey, a lot of companies want to reshore manufacturing into the United States. And there's a lot of challenges with that, right? There's the cost of labor. There's, well, can we find the labor to bring manufacturing back into the United States? Well, we have companies that are doing it, companies that are doing it successfully, where they're bringing the manufacturing back into the United States. And what they're doing is they're putting in place highly advanced technology like robotics, AI in those manufacturing plants to help alleviate some of the labor issues that could come up and the cost issues as well. Now, if we have clients and companies that want to do that, we're the test bed. Okay, we have other clients that are doing it. We could provide some guidance, at least some, here's the direction that other companies are taking, and here's what was successful, and here's some other examples that may not have been so successful. So we're able to provide our clients with the tools and resources that we have, that's available to us, to really make them as successful as they can be.
What is the general sense of the way your clients have been able to recover from COVID and deal with things like the ongoing supply chain difficulties and, of course, inflation and, of course, rising interest rates?
Sure. So I think most of my clients would fall in that 90% bucket where they had a really good year. And I think a lot of that's driven by the demand for their products. But there are other clients where, their product demand might have actually gone down, but they still had a really successful year because what they were able to do was fight off the increasing inflation, the supply chain costs, right? Like, I mean, at some point during 2022, the cost of a container quadrupled during the year. I mean, it cost the product inside the container was worth less than the actual container itself. So they were renegotiating with both customers, their suppliers. They were finding other suppliers that might be closer to the United States that can supply the same product. But to make those decisions, they needed to have information, and having readily available information that's easy to read, easy to use. Those are really the most important thing to help drive the businesses. Because if businesses waited a quarter to make a decision on something like raising prices or renegotiating costs with a supplier, you're already 3 months in the hole. But if they can react on a monthly basis to all of these different factors that are happening, it makes those decisions, it makes it easier to make because you have good data, but the swiftness of making those decisions actually matter a whole lot.
As an advisor to a business, when it comes to the financial aspects, keeping them on track, what are the factors that you look for when you sit down with your clients and you begin to get an idea of just how the business has been going?
Yeah, it's looking at their level of sophistication, looking at what their business plans are. I think that's one of the biggest things. And whenever we sit down with a client or prospective client, we want to know what their goals are. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve in the short term and the long term? And I think that really drives the conversation on how we help those clients, because in most of the industry, companies are looking to grow and then eventually sell. That's pretty common for a lot of my practice. So it's setting them up with the right tools and resources to make that process as easy as possible. So do they have the right technology? Are they using an ERP system properly? We've got some companies who, on one end of the spectrum, they're still on QuickBooks when they really need to be using a robust ERP system. But then we've got other companies that when they came on as clients to us, they were using a really complex, robust ERP system, but they weren't using it very well. They weren't using it to its full potential. So it's really, analyzing what their goals are and how can we help them get to that goal. And that's where we find ourselves being the best business partners for our clients, because we've got a wealth of knowledge and experience, not just in our office, but as an entire firm. You're looking at over 400 partners, 2,400 professionals. It's a wealth of knowledge that's been grown in this firm.
Are there any specific situations you can discuss without violating confidences, of course, where you have been able to help a business turn around or to help a business cope with unusual situations that may arise?
Sure. Yeah, there's one example that prominently comes to mind. We This was probably more than 6, 7 years ago. We got approached by a client in the manufacturing distribution space. They were fairly small at the time, but looking to grow very rapidly. Um, they didn't have very good processes in place. No monthly reporting. No real accounting policies and procedures. So we brought on an enormous team. I mean, there were probably 10 partners on this particular engagement. And at the start of the engagement, this company was probably doing 25 million in revenues when we were engaged by them. But we brought in team for taxes, state and local taxes, federal taxes. We brought in consultants. We brought in IT consulting. And then just financial statement and accounting and internal control consulting. And all these people came in with the goal that these guys want to sell their business eventually. But before they do that, they need to grow it rapidly. So we set them up with the tools to grow rapidly while also getting prepared for the sale down the road. And what that looked like was, well, we got to get processes in place. We got to use our ERP system to its fullest potential. We need dashboards so that management have easy to view data to make decisions about the business. And they also need help with bank financing. So we work with a ton of banks. So we were able to put 3 or 4 banks in front of them to help them with bank financing so that they can grow, over the next few years. And they did. They grew rapidly, mostly from some government contracting, but they grew rapidly. And then they eventually sold the business either last year or the year before for over $250 million. So it was an incredible success story for us. And we had an enormous team working on it. It wasn't just one discipline. It wasn't just one partner. It was various from from the entire firm, different offices, all working together for that common goal of helping that client get to that end goal of selling the company.
There may be some business people out there who are used to handling financial matters with just one accountant who they've been doing business with for years. How does that compare with having a large team with experts who have specialties?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Peter. I think the way we approach all of our client engagements is, we don't want to overwhelm anyone. No one wants to have to deal with questions from 10 different partners, right? That wouldn't be fun for anyone. But I think we generally have a client service partner that's involved. So that would be the partner that's the primary contact. Think of that person as the quarterback of the group, right? So the client comes to that partner with a problem. That partner is charged with figuring out, okay, who's the best person to assist with this particular matter. And I think that works wonderfully because the clients don't get overwhelmed, but they're also getting the best service possible from the people that have the most knowledge about the topic.
It almost sounds as if there's a genuine partnership, that's the goal. And how important is partnership in business? And did that concept come up in the survey results where businesses are looking to make partnerships with manufacturing sources, with shippers, and ultimately with end users?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that's paramount to how these companies were able to stay agile. You have to form strong partnerships with your suppliers and your customers. We're in a landscape now a business landscape where things are changing constantly. There's so many disruptions. I think the expectation is there will continue to be disruptions in the near future. So how do you deal with all that? Having strong partnerships with your suppliers with your customers to be able to renegotiate contracts when things are changing rapidly. I think that is one of the most important aspects of how companies that responded to this survey were able to have a successful year.
One of the big things people are talking about these days is artificial intelligence. To what extent were the companies that were surveyed dealing with the artificial intelligence issues? Mainly, how do you use it once you find out what it actually is and what it can do? And do you see a role for artificial intelligence, not only in the business community, but in the accounting and financial community?
Absolutely. So I'll start with the business community and how it impacted manufacturing distribution companies. I think they're starting to use it. You're seeing about, over 60% of the respondents are using it in some capacity. Some capacity, it's meaning they're freeing up some mundane, repetitive tasks, which is one very common use for AI. But other companies are using it to predict behaviors. How do you can use it to predict customer behavior, to better plan, your inventory when you're buying inventory. Companies are using it to link with their suppliers to be able to determine if there will be supply chain congestions in the future. Those predictive measures, I think, is what's going to be super important for businesses going forward. And the repetitive tasks as well are very important, because if you can free up 4 hours of someone's time a day from doing repetitive tasks, that person can do something else. They can work on other projects, or they can be upskilled to work to maintain some of this advanced technology that's being implemented. And then from an accounting and finance world, I think AI, we're certainly going to be using it in the very near future. We've already started to use pieces of these advanced technologies, some autonomous technology, to help us in actually auditing clients and performing some of the work that we do. But I think the biggest thing that's going to come out of AI is using AI together with data visualization software to be able to just analyze an enormous amount of data, but present it in a one-page summary with charts and things like that make it very easy for someone to read it to help make business decisions. I think that's going to be where AI ends up being the most useful for businesses, especially in M&D.
So something that will be useful, but will never replace a real live accountant.
I don't see that happening. I think you still need that insight, that knowledge from accountants. But I think there's certainly ways where AI can help alleviate some of the repetitive tasks that we do as well. But the insight and knowledge that has been developed and grown inside of a firm like ours, I don't think that's ever replaceable.
Another thing that businesses are concerned with, and have been for years and years and years before Citrin Cooperman took the first Pulse survey, is the labor market and the labor force that they have. And right now, there's considerable public attention because of strikes that are taking place, because President Biden was pitching union workers on how the union workforce is going to be developed as the country shifts more and more toward clean energy. And we see statistics coming out showing a fairly strong and stable labor situation. To what extent are the businesses that you've dealt with and the businesses that responded to the Pulse survey concerned about their labor force?
I think the businesses that responded to the survey are definitely concerned about it. I think somewhere along the lines of 40% of the respondents say a stable workforce is key to their success in the future. So it's certainly important. The labor market is difficult right now in the United States because there's very low unemployment, but there's also a mismatch in skills. You might not have the right skills for the open positions that are there, so those positions are not getting filled. Well, I think one terrific way to help alleviate some of the pressure. I think there'll always be pressure from the labor markets, just throwing that out there. But to alleviate some of that pressure is implementing some of these advanced technologies to help you, whether it's just some autonomous technology, robotics, even the use of AI. If you can help alleviate some of that to not need some of those bodies filled with employees, then you've alleviated some of that pressure. You're likely able to, you're going to need to, it's not an able thing, you're going to need to upskill your current workforce, because as you implement these new technologies, whether it's AI or any autonomous technology, robotics, you're going to need people in-house that know how to service that, how to restart the thing when it breaks down. So that's going to be really important. I think companies are going to have a responsibility to upskill their workforce to help alleviate the pressure from the labor markets.
To a large extent, the flip side is the customer base. And to a large extent, customers are becoming more sophisticated and making more demands. Was that reflected in what you heard in the Pulse survey? And to what extent are businesses adapting to better meet the demands and needs of their customers?
Absolutely. One of the most interesting things that we found in the survey was that, pricing wasn't everything to customers. For customer satisfaction ratings, probably the most important factor was the availability of product, having it on hand for your customers when they came asking. So I think businesses, need to keep that in mind. It's not just about having the cheapest product on hand. It's really having the availability, having the range of products available to your customers, and those businesses that had the products available, they were able to negotiate higher sales price without much fight because of that, because they had the availability. Their customers could rely on them to come get those products. And I think that's a really important thing for businesses to think about.
Was there anything that the survey showed, or perhaps that you've been picking up in your meetings with your various clients, that indicates what kind of attitude there is regarding U.S. manufacturing versus manufacturing offshore? And where does the sourcing of material fit into a company's planning?
Sourcing material, incredibly important. I think in the survey and in my client base, everyone's trying to move the sourcing of the product closer to the end users, right? It alleviates some of the supply chain issues that could happen, lowers cost, and also increases the speed. Lead times for inventory would be much faster. But there are certainly a lot of challenges with that. You've got to make sure you're finding the right suppliers. But businesses absolutely should be diversified in their suppliers. And that's one thing that I saw with my client base enormously throughout 2022. Where there were massive concentrations with certain suppliers, those started to come down and new suppliers came into the mix. So very important to diversify and have that just in case something happens with a particular shipping lane. Like what happened with the Suez Canal blockage. I mean, that was a bit of a nightmare. And if you had product coming from that particular route, it was impossible to get through at the time. And then a lot of those respondents and even some of the clients in my client base are trying to move manufacturing and production back into the United States. And as I mentioned before, there's challenges with that. The cost of labor is much more expensive in the United States and outside of it. We may not even have the labor to fill the manufacturing plant or the warehouse that's being built out. So those are all key considerations that businesses need to make when they're thinking of reshoring into the United States.
An almost constant business concern is the matter of taxes. What attitudes are you picking up? Did the survey pick up anything regarding the tax laws, possible changes to the tax laws, or are they just looking to write the checks that they have to write and pay no attention to that? And what do you do as an accountant in the way of planning and guiding your clients so that the tax bite is minimized?
Absolutely, yeah. So from a tax planning perspective, our firm is always working with our clients to make sure that they're in the most efficient tax position possible. The survey didn't pick up anything necessarily about taxes, but just from my own client base, with administration changes in the United States, you have to expect some sort of tax change. The landscape is likely not going to remain the same. So it's planning, making sure that you're making business decisions with the expectation that, yeah, there will likely be a change in the future and in the near future, if that.
And speaking of changes in the future or near future, uh, what do you see about businesses as they build the customer base, as they build their employee base, as they build the level of their business in wanting to sell out, to perhaps do something to protect their families in the future, to build the wealth now rather than later on. You did mention in describing the anecdote about that one company that sold out for 250 million. To what extent do you see this in some of the smaller businesses that you're dealing with?
It just depends on the individual companies and owners' goals. I've got some companies where their succession plan is they want to pass the business on to their kids. So their succession plan is not to sell. They want to grow the business. They want to secure the business's future so they can pass it on to the next generation. And then you have others who, maybe their kids are just not interested in the business that they're in, and their succession plan is to sell. So we truly work together with our clients to make sure that we're providing the right level of service, the right type of service, the right type of advice to meet whatever their goals are. But I think it's a common goal right now to sell businesses because of how high multiples are or were. Those multiples are starting to normalize, and that's being impacted severely by the rising interest rate market, right? The cost of capital is a lot higher now than it was basically free 2 years ago. So
Um, One thing that we haven't talked about is something on a personal basis. And what is it that you find most fulfilling about what you do with your clients on a day-to-day basis?
on a day-to-day basis, for me, it's truly being a business partner and an advisor. I love setting up my clients for success, and when they come to me for advice, it's a great feeling. It just is. And I know that I have the backing of an enormous firm behind me, so that even if I don't have the answers, I know that I can get them the right answer, and that part is really rewarding for me.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how is it that you ended up in this field?
Sure. So I've been doing this for more than 10 years now in manufacturing and distribution, and for most of my career, working with manufacturing distribution clients and companies that are buying manufacturing and distribution businesses, it started to really click for me when I can look at things from a buyer and a seller perspective for these manufacturing and distribution business. Because I've been on both sides. I've been on the side where my client is acquiring other businesses, and I've been on the side where my client is selling their business. And having both of those perspectives available to me has made my profession a lot more enjoyable.
hmm And finally, in terms of the Pulse survey, how would you sum up what it can do for a business that looks at it and takes the information in there seriously?
I think using the Pulse survey can help you make better decisions and more impactful decisions on how to secure your company's future. I think that's really important to take away from this, because you see these companies in there, that the 200 respondents that responded to the survey, and you see all the different responses. Some of them are using advanced tech, some are not, some are still in the implementation phase, some are not even thinking about it. I think all businesses in the M&D space need to be thinking about these advanced technology because it's going to help those companies make better decisions. And when you have data that's available and usable, it makes an enormous difference in your business. And I think that really spells the success story for the Pulse survey for 2023.
And tell us once again where people can see the survey.
Absolutely. So the survey is available through our LinkedIn. We've pushed it out a few times, and it's also available on our website,
And the website address would be?
citrincooperman.com.
And Anthony Harrypersad, thank you so much for being with us to discuss the Manufacturing and Distribution Pulse Survey for the spring of 2023. Thank you again, Anthony.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm Peter Katz of Westfair Communications. Thanks very much.